everyone. It's Amanda with Eat Pray Crunch, and I thought I would just go live today because that's just how I have to get videos done sometimes. Life is crazy with homeschooling and dealing with neurodiverse kids and everything that comes with that. So sometimes if I'm gonna get a video up, I just gotta go live. So that's how we're gonna do it today. And I'm in my car running an errand, and the kids are with grandma right now, so that's another time where I can have guaranteed silence because that's not always a guaranteed thing at home. In fact, it is almost guaranteed to not always be silent at home, at least when the kids are awake. So anyway, I just wanted to hop on here and talk to you guys about little Miss Sophie. So if you guys have been following my channel for a while, you will know the whole journey that we have gone on getting our older son Alex diagnosed with autism and ADHD and anxiety. That was something that he was diagnosed with. Well, he was diagnosed with autism when he was 3 and ADHD. Let's see, that was like when he was 6, I think. And we've had him on medication since he was 6 or 7, and it's been world changing. It's been so good. But the vast majority of talking about mental health stuff with, as it pertains to my kids, has been about Alex, because he, up until recent years, was, had the most needs mental health wise. So yeah, but knowing that Alex was autistic, and after, I've talked also about how after he was diagnosed, I got an ADHD diagnosis because learning a lot of the stuff about him and everything got me realizing a lot of things about myself. Same with Bill. Bill has gotten an ADHD and high functioning autism twice exceptional diagnosis as well. So we're a very neurodiverse family. And given that both parents and older brother are neurodiverse in some ways, it seemed pretty likely that our other 2 kids probably would have something else going on also. So I had always kept that in the back of my mind, was keeping it, just keeping my eye out for things. And so, as Sophie, Sophie as a baby and a toddler and a preschooler, she seemed much more typical than Alex did. She didn't seem to be showing any, red flags for autism or anything like that. She seemed to be doing everything, like reaching all of her milestones exactly on time. Like her height and weight was always at the 50th percentile. Everything just seemed real even keel with her. All throughout her babyhood and her toddlerhood and preschool years and everything. And but she did, during those years, she had big tantrums and meltdowns, but what 2-3-year-old doesn't? So that just seemed pretty normal to me at the time. So then last year she started kindergarten. And as you guys know, we are part-time homeschooling, part-time going through our parent partnership in our district, where the kids take a few classes a week there. And we, started her in kindergarten. It was virtual because, it was last year. It was still right in the middle of COVID, everything. But it kind of started to provide a little bit more structure in her life, a little more asking, it was kindergarten, so it's not like huge responsibilities, but a little bit more. Like she was being asked to do some basic schoolwork that kindergartners do. And some struggles started to appear. She, don't mind me, I'm just gonna get my water here. So she was definitely starting to show signs of difficulty with distraction. And when we would sit down to do homework, it was, I mean, if it was a subject that she liked, then she could easily hyper-focus on it. Usually anything to do with art, creativity, anything like that, like no problem. She could do that, no sweat. But if it was something that she didn't particularly love, it was like pulling teeth to get her to do schoolwork. So this was really starting to show with teaching her how to read and with math. So that was going on. And then as she grew out of her toddlerhood, you know, she had like the 3 major tantrums, that kind of thing. She didn't really grow out of that once she got to 4 or 5 and then on into 6 age. Now she's 7. Those meltdowns, she continued to have these massive meltdowns. And as she got older, they continued to get more explosive, I guess you could say, which was starting to put up a little red flag in my mind, because, you know, I was thinking, oh, is, you know, autism, ADHD, what's going on here? Like meltdowns. It seemed like pretty uncharacteristic for like a 6, 7-year-old. And it was happening, still is happening, maybe 3 to 4 times a week. So pretty frequently. This wasn't just like a one-off thing. It was a consistent thing where any little thing would set her off. Like any little frustration. Oftentimes, you know, schoolwork would end in tears and a meltdown because she just did not want to do reading. She did not want to do math. I was not going to make her. It was, sometimes we'd both end in tears. So that's something that would set it off. If she feels like there's some sort of injustice with her brothers, if something feels unfair to her, if she's tired, if she's hungry, like, I mean, everybody can get a little hangry sometimes, right? But this, you know, this is frequent. And just if she was annoyed, like it's any small little thing would set her off from 0 to 60 into having full-blown explosive meltdown. So that was going on. And in the meanwhile, last year ended, we around summertime, I think it was, we brought some of these concerns to our family doctor. And I said, I think it's possible that Sophie might have some ADHD stuff going on. I don't think it's autism. I mean, I'm really keen on keeping my eyes open for autism after Alex. I really don't think it's autism because she is very socially aware. Oh, hello, Lisa. I have ADHD and so does my husband. Okay, great. Hello, fellow ADHDer. So, anyway, what was I saying? So, yeah, so summertime came and we went to our doctor and I brought these concerns to her saying, well, I really think something's going on with her. I don't think it's autism. All right, I was saying autism. I don't think it's autism because she doesn't seem to have the same kind of social difficulties that Alex has. Like, it's funny because Alex is an extrovert, but he has a lot of trouble with understanding social cues and that kind of thing. So he's very socially awkward. Sophie, on the other hand, is an introvert, very introverted, and to the point of extreme social anxiety, but she understands social conventions and social cues and that kind of thing. So, you know, she understands the why behind social rules, whereas Alex didn't so much. She also doesn't seem to have the repetitive behaviors that Alex has. She doesn't like to, you know, do things over and over and over again, or like watch things over and over and over again like Alex does. Or like the stimming behaviors. Alex has a lot of stimming behaviors. He flaps his hands, like classic autism stuff. Whereas Sophie doesn't have any of that. She doesn't also seem to have the same kind of rigidity that Alex has, where he gets really stuck on one thing and he can't get his mind off of it, kind of thing. Sophie is not like that either. She's a lot more go with the flow kind of person, except when she's having a meltdown. But let's see. It's difficult as a kid, but it can become a superpower. Yes, absolutely, it can become a superpower. And I should mention that. Sophie is extremely bright. We're still not entirely sure. We did not have her IQ tested like we have with Alex. But she is very bright. It's clear that she, you know, she has a huge vocabulary and she talks like a little adult a lot of the time. So she's, you know, she's definitely a bright kid. So I'm not sure if she fully would qualify for being twice exceptional. But she definitely has like the bright thing and the difficulty going on at the same time. But so she is very smart. And she has creativity superpowers. Like that is her gift. She is such a creative girl. Ever since she was a little tiny thing, she was creating things all the time with whatever is around her. She turns into art. Anything that is around her, she turns into art. It's quite something. She's just always on the go, always busy, always making things. So, but that was another thing, is that she's always on the go. Always busy doing something. So that's another sign of ADHD. So anyway, I brought all this to our doctor, and you know, also talked about her social anxiety and a lot of the anxiety that she was having around schoolwork and that kind of thing. And the doctor actually told me, she's like, well, maybe you just need to put her into public school. My son refused to be homeschooled, so I put him in public school. I'm like, I don't think that's the problem here. I mean, that may be true of some people or some kids, that they do better in public school, and she might do well in public school, but I don't think that that is the problem. You know, there's something deeper than that going on. And she's like, oh, well, she just has anxiety. Put her in therapy, and that is what the guidelines are for a kid her age. Even though at the same age, because when we took Sophie to the doctor, she was 6. And at age 6, we had Alex diagnosed with ADHD and was put on ADHD medication. But because it was so much more outwardly obvious with him, like the doctor was much more willing to diagnose him than Sophie. She wasn't so much willing to listen to, these are the struggles we're having at home. Anyway, so we're like, okay, well, it doesn't hurt to try therapy. So that's what we did. Don't mind me getting another sip of water. Sorry, you can see dinner in the background there. I always pick up dinner on Thursday nights from a local church. It's really awesome that they do that just for anyone and everyone. They're like, dinner's on us on Thursdays. So I'm like, okay, that's great for a busy mom. Anyway, so we did therapy, and we have been doing, her and Sophie and Alex have been doing therapy with this amazing play therapist. And I feel so blessed that we were able to get in with her, because like everywhere else has been, I mean, even her now, she has no openings, and everywhere else is just like insanely like waitlisted. It's ridiculous out there. So I'm so thankful that we were able to get her into such a good therapist. It's play-based, great stuff. She's been learning all sorts of strategies, and which has been fantastic. But the problem is when she gets into this emotionally dysregulated state, it's like her prefrontal cortex just completely shuts off, and it's like her brainstem takes over, and she can't, you know, she can't walk, she can't talk. All she can do is sit there and scream and flail it's like she can't do anything. Like, so she can't access the tools that she has been learning in therapy, even though she wants to. When she is in her normal frame of mind, when she's in that state, she's incapable of accessing those tools. So I'm like, okay, we've done what the doctor asked us to. We've done therapy for almost a year now. I talked with the therapist, and she had done, actually a couple months back, she had done a kind of informal ADHD and anxiety questionnaire. And she's like, I do think she's at least borderline ADHD and definitely has anxiety. But our therapist is not qualified to prescribe medication. So, we could get like an informal diagnosis from her, but not one to the point where we could get medication from our doctor. Our doctor, in order to take the diagnosis seriously, wanted us to have her evaluated by a psychologist. So we went back to our doctor, and I said, look, like, we've been doing therapy for a while. Because she was capable of diagnosing ADHD. And I said, can we do the evaluation again? I'll fill out all the paperwork. And so we did. And the thing is, it's supposed to be a parent portion and a teacher portion. And the thing is, Sophie, like many girls, I did the exact same thing when I was a kid. Girls are very, very good at masking and hiding it. And this is true of autism, ADHD, all of the types of neurodiversity. Girls are, in a female presentation, girls are much more likely to mask. And that is exactly what Sophie has done. She's, a perfect little angel, a people pleaser when she is at school. And so, her teachers couldn't see it. They're very supportive and everything when I talked to them about it, but they didn't see it the same way we did when we were at home. And so because of that, the doctor's like, well, the parent portion and the teacher portion have to agree. If there's a discrepancy, it means that it's not actually ADHD, it's just a behavioral issue. I'm like, well, clearly we have a behavioral issue, like, thank you, Captain Obvious. But and I'm like, okay, this is really frustrating because, like, we are seeing these things at home, like, doesn't it mean something that I have ADHD and so does, brother and husband and everything? And she's like, well, it's not really appropriate to compare her to her brother. Her brother's needs are much more severe or obvious. So because Alex's ADHD and autism is more outwardly obvious, as it almost always is in boys, and boys are not as good at masking, he got the diagnosis, easy peasy. Sophie, on the other hand, like with many girls, the experience of ADHD is much more of an internal experience instead of an external manifestation. And so it wasn't as outwardly obvious. And so our doctor was like, she looks fine to me. Like, she just has a little anxiety. Keep doing your therapy. I'm like, we've been doing therapy and it's great, but it's not doing what we need it to be doing. So she's like, so I pushed, and she was like, okay, if you really want to have an evaluation, I will send you to Children's Hospital and you can have an evaluation there. So, because that was one of the few places our insurance would take. So I called them, and it was a 6 to 9 month wait list. So I was like, oh Lord, that's like well into next school year. Like, do we really want to wait that long? That's ridiculous. So I looked into private psychologists and psychiatrists, that kind of thing. But to have like a full neurodevelopmental evaluation like Alex did when he was 3, it was like $3,000 out of pocket. And we're like, we can't do that right now. So I kept looking, and finally I found a place that did, it was a gal who did primarily telemedicine, so that she could be licensed in a few different states. And her main focus is diagnosing and treating ADHD. So I'm like, this is what we need. We need a specialist who really understands the ins and outs, how it presents in females, that kind of thing. So, and it was much more affordable. You know, it was like a couple $100 instead of a couple $1,000. I'm like, I think we can handle that. And she had availability like within a couple weeks. So I'm like, oh, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. So we did. And yesterday, Sophie had her telemedicine evaluation. And this gal went in much more depth. I did have to do some of the questionnaires that were very similar to some of the ones I had done with the doctor before, but they were more in depth. And then during the evaluation, you know, Sophie was with me, and she was definitely showing her social anxiety side. She was feeling very nervous the whole time. Anyway, you know, the doctor basically just asked me a ton of questions, very in depth. She went very in depth, asking like all the right kind of questions about how ADHD presents and how it presents in girls and that kind of thing. And I felt so heard for the first time in a long time after what we've been dealing with. Like, I love our doctor, and like, she's been so helpful with me and Bill and Alex. And so I was really surprised when she was so dismissive of our concerns with Sophie. So after that whole experience of the entire last year, it was so refreshing to have somebody like who was listening and believing us, and like not making me second guess myself. Like, am I crazy? Are these things that I'm seeing not actually happening? Like, am I not actually living my own life here? Like, I felt kind of gaslit a little bit. I don't think that was her intention, but that's how it made me feel. So it was so nice to feel heard. And after the evaluation, she was like, Sophie definitely has ADHD. It is clear as day. Sophie definitely has ADHD. And she has anxiety. So I was like, oh, thank God. I mean, not that that's like something I want my child to have, but you know, after all of the experiences that we've been having all this time, it's such a relief to have like an official name for it, an official diagnosis to explain, you know, what's been going on. And so I was like, oh, well, thank you so much for finally giving us this diagnosis that we have been needing for a couple years now. And I think Sophie was relieved too, because I explained everything to her afterward, and she gave me this big hug, and she was just like happy to finally like have hope that there is something that can help her brain when she gets into that dysregulated state, because she doesn't like it either when she's in that state. Poor girl. I mean, it's got to be so hard to be feeling that way. I mean, I'm sure I did when I was a kid too, because I have ADHD. Although I don't know if I have the emotional dysregulation the same way she has it, but man, that's got to be hard to be in that state. And so, anyway, so this doctor, well, she's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. She decided to start Sophie on a medication. So she decided to start with a non-stimulant medication called Intuitive, which the generic is called guanfacine. And she wanted to start with a non-stimulant first because oftentimes kids can have trouble with their appetite and eating enough when they are on a stimulant, and that has actually been true with Alex. He is borderline underweight, and so we are really working with him to be eating a lot more. But because it's helping him so much, we don't want to go off of it because it is making him a functional person. But I totally understand that concern of not wanting it to affect the kid's appetite. And if there is a non-stimulant ADHD medication that works, why not go with it? So we're going to try that. We started today, and it takes a little while for it to kick in. So we, didn't see anything immediately. It'll probably take a week or 2 or 3 or something before we see full results of it. But it just feels so good to finally be getting her some help and some treatment. And we are all, once we get that all steady and she's doing well with that, then we're also going to add an anxiety medication, because her anxiety sometimes is through the roof. She just gets so clingy to me sometimes, especially when we are in social situations, school. It is starting to get better this school year as time goes on. But she's also started getting stomach aches, which is exactly what happened to me when I was a kid. My anxiety would always present as nausea and stomach aches as a kid. And that's starting to happen with her as well. So poor kid. I'm just feeling so glad that she is going to be able to get help with this starting at such a young age, whereas I wasn't diagnosed until I was 34 and, went through all of those years struggling so much. And it just feels so good and so hopeful that she hopefully won't have to struggle in the same ways that I did when I was younger. So anyway, so that's the story of Sophie getting diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety. So, I might do another video just as a follow-up down the road, seeing how she's doing, if it's improved with medication and that kind of thing. So be sure to leave any questions or your experiences or anything like that in the comments down below, because I do love talking with you guys. And I know that I've connected with several of you already about your experiences with either being neurodiverse yourself or your child being neurodiverse in some way. And it's just nice that us parents have each other's backs with that whole experience of raising neurodiverse little people and being a neurodiverse person. So anyway, that is all, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and we will see you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this is the kind of content that interests you, and we'll see you later. Bye.